In today's video, we're going to break down a case study that I'll say is a common situation in which somebody may seek out our advice. And so we're going to look at the situation of Nigel and Phoebe, who are in their early 60s, starting to think about retirement. They've got $3 million in investable assets, 2 million of which is inside of an IRA. And their top priority is just to talk through financial planning considerations, both while they're still working, as well as what they'll want to consider doing once they stop working. So, welcome to Cuppable. My name is Michael Dunham. I'm the director of planning here at Fontana Financial Planning. All right, so to get started, we'll go ahead and we will pull up a balance sheet on the screen to kind of break down a little bit more about Nigel and Phoebe's situation. So, as I mentioned earlier, they've got $2 million in an IRA account and $1 million in a joint taxable investment account. They're in their early 60s. They've got a couple of years until they plan on retiring. And right now, they're a high income couple that will plan to spend a month or $120,000 a year after taxes and after inflation for the rest of their life. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to go over a couple of things that may be worth considering for Nigel and Phoebe, both right now as well as once they stop working, a few things to be prepared for. So the first thing that I want to go ahead and pull up on the screen would be just taking a look at their required minimum distribution projections. And so what a required minimum distribution is when an individual turns between age 73 and 75, depending on their age, the government forces you to start taking money out of your IRA or 401k account. And so the way that that works is it is a percentage of the account, and that percentage gets bigger every year that time goes on. And so for Nigel and Phoebe, their first year that they'll need to take a required minimum distribution is age 75. And if we project out their current $2 million account balance and we grow that at a rate of 6% per year until age 75, we come up with roughly $4.8 million in their IRA at that point in time. And one thing I'll point out, given the $1 million investment account and just thinking about tax efficiency and some things we'll hit on, it's not uncommon that somebody in this situation would not need to touch their IRA over that 15-year period. And it's something that we will encounter where somebody didn't do anything proactive over that period. They get to their required minimum distribution age and they realize they have these huge required distributions they have to take, and it's kind of too late to really move the ship or move the needle at that point in time. So in this hypothetical situation, Nigel and Phoebe have a year one required distribution of a little over $194,000. Now that's on top of Social Security. If they had any part-time income, it's on top of that, any pensions, et cetera. And so a lot of times these required distributions get turned on and people find themselves in much higher tax brackets than they were leading up to the required distribution. And the other thing I'll point out about these required distributions is that because that percentage gets bigger every year, what we often find is later in life, that distribution just goes up and up and up. So if we fast forward to age 80, even after taking required distributions every year, their projected required distribution amount at that point in time is $253,000. And then if we fast forward even further to age 85, we're up to $324,000. And so these required distributions are a huge potential tax time bomb if nothing proactive is done about them. So a couple things that I'll bring up planning wise to be aware of there. One, in this situation where we have taxable investments that we can live off of once we stop working, what we often see is they're earning a good income, they're in a high tax bracket, they stop working, and their income essentially drops to zero or very close to it. And so that presents us with an opportunity to proactively realize income at lower rates so that we avoid getting pushed up into these higher rates again later on in life. And so doing Roth conversions is something that we often see as a big opportunity for somebody in this type of situation where we can flip some IRA money over to Roth, and we can do it strategically to try and fill up lower tax brackets. So maybe there's an opportunity to convert money at 10%, to convert money at 12%, even maybe at 22 or 24%, depending on the situation. And so that's one planning opportunity that we'll look for is there a way to intentionally pay taxes at a lower rate? And if so, Roth conversions tend to be a really good way to reduce the value of your IRA and pay taxes at a efficient rate. With those required distributions, a lot of times people just think about like their current situation. So a married couple thinks, we're going to be married forever and we only consider married tax rates. The reality is one spouse generally outlives the other. And so one spouse is going to find themselves on the single side of the tax bracket pyramid, which we'll pull up here to kind of show the impact of that, which for most tax brackets, the threshold that you get bumped up into the next bracket is roughly half on the single side as it is on the married side. Now, the issue is with required distributions, generally those don't go down. And if they do, it's only slightly. Where you may find yourself on the single side of the tax bracket pyramid, but you're earning the same income or close to it. Your Social Security, generally the higher benefit sticks around. Pensions, the full thing or a portion of a pension may stick around, where it's not uncommon that the spouse that lives longer all of a sudden with the same level of income finds himself in a much higher bracket. And then ultimately from an estate planning consideration, when the money is ultimately passed down to the next generation will have to take the money out over a 10-year period, and they'll have to add that money to whatever income they're earning year by year. And so, in this situation where let's say Nigel and Phoebe have one child and they've got $4 million left over in their IRA account when they both pass away, that child may be in a position where they have to take out $400,000 a year on top of their existing income and can pay top tax brackets, if not, close to top tax brackets on most or all of that money, depending on their income situation. So if there's an opportunity to strategically pay taxes at the lower rate, that's what we want to take advantage of. The next projector I'll pull up is our Social Security planner. And so just to kind of level set on the way that Social Security works, you can take it as early as 62, you can take it as late as age 70, and generally every year that you wait, you get an 8% increase in the level of benefit, plus a cost of living adjustment, which is typically about 2.5% on average. And so in total, you're getting about a 10.5% increase every year that you wait. And so the scenario that we've put together here is one in which it'll make sense for Nigel and Phoebe to wait until age 70. They both have an earnings history and they both benefit by claiming their own benefit versus possibly taking a spousal benefit, which is half of your spouse's full retirement age benefit. And in that type of situation, you may want to claim early, say at 67 or full retirement age, because your benefit stops growing at that point in time. But in this situation where they're both healthy and they both have a good earnings record, waiting until age 70 is the way that we can maximize the Social Security benefit that they will get. And so if they did that in today's dollars, they would receive just shy of $85,000 per year. If we fast forward to what that would actually be at age 70 in 2035 in this situation, it's going to be in excess of $105,000 per year. And so that's where you add Social Security to those required distributions, other income that you may be receiving. It's not uncommon for individuals with large retirement accounts to all of a sudden find themselves in a position where even though they're not working, they're getting $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in income. And now all of a sudden they have this big tax problem that they weren't prepared for. So we touched on Roth conversions. We touched on some estate planning considerations. The last thing that I'd like to touch on is charitable planning. And so one thing I'll bring up with that large IRA, at age 70 and a half, you're allowed to start doing what's called a qualified charitable distribution. So you can do up to $100,000 inflation adjusted per year from your IRA directly to charity. It counts towards your required distribution and it comes out of your IRA tax free. Typically, for individuals with a large required distribution problem, giving from your IRA is often the best place to give to charity once you reach that age 70 and a half threshold. Now, in the meantime, Nigel and Phoebe, like we said, are earning a high income and still working, and they're going to drop and probably have zero or close to zero income at that point in time. And so one idea that we're big fans of for people in this type of situation is doing what's called a bunching strategy and using appreciated stock to fund a donor advised fund, or what we call a foundation account, while you're still earning a high income. And so let's say that Nigel and Phoebe give $20,000 a year to charity. They're very generous people and they enjoy giving to charity. Well, what we can do is we can look into their taxable investment account and we can cherry pick $20,000 of the biggest gainers, and we can give that to a foundation account, and we avoid paying capital gains taxes on the growth, and we lock in an itemized tax deduction when we move the money into the foundation account. And given this situation where they've essentially got a 10-year runway before they are going to be able to do those required distributions, we can bunch multiple years of giving into these early years when they're still earning a high income, and then have pre-funded charity into their donor advised fund so that when they stop working, they continue giving the way that they normally would have. They're just giving out of their foundation account, and they brought forward the tax benefits into the earlier years when they were in a high income. So just as a recap, required distributions, if you are an individual who has a large retirement account, is something to think about. And it's not uncommon that people come to us and they've done a great job saving, but they have a lot of pre-tax money that they're going to owe income taxes on. And if you can figure out a way to strategically minimize the amount of taxes that you pay on that money, you'll have significantly more money for your family and less that will go to the government. Being aware of Social Security and how the Social Security benefit rises over time. Also, delaying Social Security leaves a bigger window for us to be able to do Roth conversions, because Social Security is partially taxable. And if we turn it on early, we may fill up some of those lower brackets with our Social Security benefit and lose an opportunity to take advantage of low rates. Considering the next generation and the 10-year rule is something that's very important if you have a large retirement account. And then finally, charitable planning, just knowing the smart way to give at various stages of life, 70 and a half or later, qualified charitable distributions. Before then, possibly looking at a bunching strategy, gifting appreciated stock, using a foundation account. These are all great ways to get a better tax benefit and still do the same giving that you would have done otherwise. Thank you so much for joining us today for this solo episode of Cuppable. If you would like to discuss your situation and how some of these ideas may apply to you, we do have a link down below in the show notes that you can use to schedule a introductory call with a member of our team. And in the meantime, rebalance with discipline.